Hey, welcome to another episode of No University, and I have the distinct honor of sitting with great lifelong friend Chuck Swindoll. Chuck, we're going to just dive right into it so we can get to the heart of the matter. For those that are shockingly unfamiliar with your work, how many books are you up to now, do you think? How many books have you
You know what? I don't count them. I think it's around 90.
Okay, so 90 books.
Something like that. Yep.
Okay. How early?
They go real cheap in secondhand bookstores. You know, if they're signed, you get another.
That's right. They make great coasters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. When was your first book? How old were you when you started writing?
My first book was about 1977, 78, called For Those Who Hurt. And I'm 34, 70. I was about 35, roughly.
How many kids?
30,
and that's
maybe 40.
And this is important because that current season, you were 35, 40, you said?
I'm thinking I was. Let me figure it better.
But how many kids are at the time? It was busy.
I was 40, 45. We had all 4 kids.
And it was busy.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you write that book?
A man heard me preach a sermon. And I forget what I called it, but he came up afterwards. His name was Larry Cruzen. Mm-hmm. Larry was at the Fullerton Church. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, that ought to be a book. And I go, yeah, right. That's all I need. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, I'll pay for it. I said, I'm not gonna do anything like a book. Don't have time. He says, I'm gonna pay for it. It's got to be a book. So the next day I went to the church office and I mentioned that to what we call then our secretary, today their executive assistant. And she said, I think it's a great idea. And I go, whose side are you on? She said, I think it'd be great. I'll help you. I'll do the typing. Well, long and short of it is, I scrounged around, and of all things, there was an outfit that wanted to publish it. Multnomah Press published it. And John Van Diest was my friend. He said, yeah, we'd like to do it. And still in print.
Unbelievable.
It is. That was my very first.
And so I started kind of hanging around the house and everything, and your son and I grew up together, and 2 years old. So I got to see you,
first time I saw you were sitting on your daddy's shoulders. Mm-hmm. He was painting the Marie Callender sign that he had just done, the wood sign,
Yep.
And I said, who's that kid? And he said, that's my son. And that's my first time to meet you.
Well, and what I think is amazing is you're like a second father to me, a mentor, because we had a lot of conversations at the Fullerton house. But
we did.
Specifically what I love whenever I would stay the night, I'd come down and I learned, he's got a nickname, and I call him Flash, because his work ethic.
What?
His work ethic was, he totally could get more done before 8 a.m. than anybody.
It's true. I do a lot before 8 a.m.
He would wash the truck. It's true. It's true. You would wash the truck. Yeah. You would write the devotional. You'd write everything, and you wrote it. You didn't type it. You wrote.
Yeah, I had a knot right there. I have a knot right there. I still write longhand.
Yep. But what that taught me was work ethic, and and I still to this day, anywhere between 4:30 to 8 a.m. getting the kids to school. It's like a whole separate life of productivity. Mm-hmm. One of the things.
It's amazing for a guy your age for you to have that kind of work ethic.
Well, I learned it from you.
Wow.
Because here's the thing, it's quiet.
It is.
You can hear the Lord.
You're right.
Your heart's at rest. It's almost like your creativity is unhindered.
That's right.
But I really want to get down into like the crux of the craft in and of itself. Uh-huh. And so, in terms of and I'm going to pay you a compliment, and I'm serious when I say this. When I look at all the authors, and not just in the ministry realm, you got self-help realm, you got people that write fiction, nonfiction, all that. Right. You are to me the Norman Rockwell.
Oh my gosh!
And why is that? Because you have the ability, and what attracted me so much to your writing was you have the ability to storytell, and you were always big on this. Mm-hmm. You love, because it was the heart of the Lord, though. The Lord always says, like, hey, forget this. Yep. I'm going with story.
Right.
And story trumps every time.
It does. And so you can't start a good story and not hold the attention. Honestly, a story does it. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. And when you start it, it of course has a plot, has characters, has ups and downs, and usually has a climax it reaches. Often some time of disappointment, disillusionment, and then the final of a lesson, a moral that kind of emerges from it, whether stated or not. And I love those kind of things.
So let's speak into that really quick, because I know you. Let's first talk about what your, I wouldn't call it a formula, but what's your go-to in terms of if you're gonna say, okay, here's the main point when I'm crafting a message or when I'm crafting a book, what do you think are the fundamental ingredients that has to happen in a story for it to be compelling, but to tug on the heart of a person?
Well, you have to break the whole hum. As you start, you got to have a
disruption.
A jolting statement is very helpful. You don't have to be silly about it, but I mean, it needs to. My Easter message, for example, last Sunday, I began with, there were a lot of things about Simon Peter that he did not like. What does that mean? Where's he going with this? And it was a story about Simon. In fact, I used his original, Simon Bar-Jonah, son of John, and I told about how he got started and he met Jesus. He wasn't interested. Jesus said, "You're Peter." It's like calling a Chihuahua Goliath, you know? I mean, he's not the Rock.
Right.
But the Lord saw in him that ability and saw that potential, is a better way to put it. So you begin with an intriguing statement that, or something that grabs the attention and breaks the whole hum.
Okay.
I never assume they want to listen. Never assume they've come to hear something I've got to say. They've come with other things on their mind, and it's my job to arrest their attention. And once I arrest it, then I got to keep it. And that's where the challenge comes in. And it's at that point you have to forget about impressing them. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to let it kind of unfold, some of it spontaneous. I don't memorize anything but my first line. From then on,
Boom.
I got it going. But I really work on the whole piece with an idea in mind.
With an end in mind.
It leads to an end, but there's a general idea.
Got it.
Let me think of one. The Good Samaritan is a good story. Jesus told the story of the guy that was on his way to the road to Damascus, and he gets mugged, and a priest walks by and walks away from him. Another assistant walks by and gets away from him. But a Samaritan, who's hated by the Jews, comes and goes, "Whoa!" And he leans over, helps him, gets him on his feet, gets him on his donkey, gets him to a little inn, pays his stuff, and cares for him. And Jesus told the story because a guide said to him, "Who is my neighbor?" You to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, this lawyer hears that and he goes, he wants to get around it because it's convicting. And he says, "Well, who's my neighbor?" The guy next door, 2 doors down, 4 blocks away. And Jesus said, "I'll tell you a story." And he told a story, and obviously the one who cares becomes your neighbor. So the question is not who is my neighbor, it's who is my neighbor's neighbor. It's about me when I look into that question. And I think it leads to the idea of this, and this I got after thinking about it. What you see determines what you do, and what you do determines who you are. It sounds like a tongue twister, but that works. And I think by approaching it like that, you help people analyze, who am I? Would I have stopped?
So you put them as the character in the story.
Sure do, always. That's another thing. Personify the story by having people in it. And when you do that, they're there. And when you get people there, you cannot not hold their attention.
Because now they're the hero. Or they're the character.
Or whatever. Yeah. When I go in the doctor's office and he's analyzing somebody else's situation, I'm an observer. When he says to me, I'm a little concerned about your x-ray,
Oh, yeah.
suddenly I'm in it.
Well,
And he cannot not lose my attention. Or he cannot lose my attention because that statement grabs me.
So when you're crafting a message in a story and you're looking at it, you kind of pick an arc of here's the idea, here's how I want to place the person that's listening.
The idea isn't always there to start with. I don't have an idea then to force a story
How do you
into
cultivate it? Because I know songwriters are different. Some go music, then lyric. Some people start with lyric, and then some just have a title, then create it around that. How do you approach?
Well, I got it made because I got a whole book of stories.
And by the way, to that point, one thing that I always have used, I've used this quote, I stole it from you. I go, how do you know what you're going to write? And he goes, that's never a problem. I've got 50 books in my head.
That's right.
And if one gets shot down, don't worry, I've got 40 more to back it up.
And I deal with a book that's full of 66 books. And so and they're all inspired. So you can't lose on that. You got a lot of them and they're all inspired. So the only way to lose it is to miss what it's saying. So you can't be in a hurry. I don't first look at a clock and then go, okay, I got 25 minutes. I got to get this. Usually I don't.
Right.
If I'm too late, then I have to do that. But I don't let myself be late. That's why I start early. Coming up, I got a concert. We're going to call it a concert on hope.
Okay.
And so my music guy said to me the other day, because I'd forgotten to write it down, he said, by the way, it's coming up April 17. So I get a little loose stool, I start thinking, oh, Lord, I'm going to get 17 out of it.
You're killing me.
And I need 4 narrations that are 6 minutes each. Okay. So you know what I did? You know me. I sat down day before yesterday and I started writing, and this morning I finished the 4th narration.
Of course.
Because once I get on a roll, I don't even want to eat. I get on a roll and it starts unfolding, and I think, well, the next time I'm going to write that, so I'll write this down. And then I get to the next one, I think, well, I got to do that other one because it ties in with this one. Then I go, I slept last night a little bit, and then I got up this morning about 3:30, 4 o'clock. I sat down and on my computer I wrote in a Word document. I wrote the narration out, and then I sent all 4 narrations to my music guy, and I said, here they are. I did that not to impress him. First of all, I do it to get it off my mind.
For sure.
And now I can soak on it.
Totally.
When you can soak on the stuff, you see things you otherwise would have missed. If you're in a hurry and it's got to be done and it's done day after tomorrow, it's usually not done well. But when you got time to think it through, you can make that thing sing. Yeah.
Then you know your thresholds. So I love the stuff about story. I love the fact that you've got batched content ready to go whenever you want it. But what you're talking about too is also seizing. I look at it like this: you'll be asleep just before 3:30. You'll wake up. You've got all 12 of those things hovering.
Yeah, and I can't get back to sleep. I try.
I know.
But it's just lie there and you go back to sleep.
I'm like, good luck. You're not me.
I'll be more frustrated than ever. So now she's given up. She said, go ahead and do it.
So what I do is I get up and I either need to journal it and get the bullet points down to not to forget it.
Yeah. Let me give you a great statement. Thoughts disentangle themselves over the lips and through the fingertips. Isn't that a great line?
Your daughter quoted that today. I love it.
And they do. Because when you have thoughts, they hang there and they're nebulous. They kind of drift, and they're awash. But when you write them down, this is a Francis Bacon quote. You'll love this.
Well, his name's Bacon. It's got to be good.
Yeah, right. Speaking makes a ready man. Reading makes a broad man. Writing makes an exact man.
I love it.
Don't you love that?
No, it's great.
When you write, you are, and that's why I love to write, because you have to be exact. When I speak, the ear is very forgiving. If I use a wrong verb, or if I do a plural with a singular, everybody goes, it doesn't matter. But if I write it, it's like, whoa, it jumps at you. So it's got to be exact. Well, the more you write, the better you get at that, or you have a real good editor that helps you with this.
Totally.
And I'll say sometime in a margin to my editor, hey, Rome, I'm not sure I said that right. Think through this for me. And he'll come back and think through it. And he'll either say, no, it's good. Or, How do you like this? He gave me an option or two. That's the benefit of an editor.
Yep.
But back to writing. I think when you write your stuff out, that's why journaling is so helpful.
Oh, yeah. Well, think of how much you forget.
Oh, I know.
So at least if you're putting it in the net.
I know. And it keeps your brain functioning. You stay hot on the subject. Yeah, I love it. Plus, you have a little record of it. You go, what is that I wrote back? There it is.
Yep.
And you were able to trace it back. Whereas if it was a thought, you lost it.
Lucas wrote Star Wars in pencil with a pad.
Did he really?
I've heard Spielberg does the same thing. It's about longhand. It's about the art of writing itself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, some get really.
I believe in that.
But some people nerd out on the penmanship and all that. But for the most,
don't worry about penmanship.
Just write.
Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about
punctuation.
Punctuation. Just write. Even do half sentences. I do half sentences because I don't want to forget the next one I have on my mind like that. When you have a mind that runs like that, you want to capture as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure.
I have a feeling in your art, when you're doing your painting, you sometimes stop that and go here because you get an idea.
100%.
I saw you do it when you did our Paws and Tails thing.
Yeah.
You were doing the fence and you thought, no. And you get a character over here and a little house sitting here. And then you did the fence. Fence is boring when you put the other stuff in there.
Now, I'll even tell you, some people look at ADD as a curse. I think it's actually a blessing because
it can be.
It allows me to, what's going on here while what's coming out here, it's like a full multitask.
Yeah, it is. You just have to control it.
100%.
Yeah.
Because that can hurt you too.
That's right. And you can be so reactive to things and so hyper that you just hit the high points. Good writing hits the low points, hits the deep points. I think, I forget who wrote it, but we don't need today more intellectual people. We don't even need richer people. We need deeper people. Deep people are the ones that attract us to them. My mentors were all deep. Doesn't mean they were dull. Doesn't mean they were that brilliant, though they were bright guys. But they always had, as my dad used to say, be sure you have more behind the counter than you ever put on display. Don't show your whole wares. Be sure there are some that you're not showing. And so when you do put some out there and you get them out there, what they don't know is you've also got that. And you could show that. If that interests them, you're able to do this.
Oh, yeah.
By that, I
trust.
mean you've got a depth, you've got what I call a reservoir of information, of truth. So when I go through a book of the Bible, for example, as I'm doing in the Gospel by Matthew, I have to think ahead and kind of build up to certain places along the way. And it's a story. It's the unfolding of a story. Don't make it complicated.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Talk to me about...
Simplicity is a beautiful thing.
Talk to me about difference between a hobbyist and a pro when it comes to craft.
Oh. Attention to detail. I would say...
Or I should say some of the character traits of a pro. I mean, not just for money, or maybe it could be for money, but what is the difference between a pro and a hobbyist?
I think a hobbyist can take it or leave it. I think it's a little more of a mood. As a professional, it's not just acting on a mood. It's something that drives you. You are on a pursuit. And even though you may have a great sense of humor and enjoy life and whatever, there's a part of you that is just like god-awful serious. And you really aren't messing around here because you're a professional in this. And you don't do it to say, look, I'm a professional. You forget yourself and you do your work, which you have been trained to do, but you've cultivated it over time. The guy that did Cynthia, my wife's surgery, did her spinal surgery. Incredible surgery. And Colleen also had it. Incision in the front, 3.5 hours. Incision through the back, 4.5, 5 hours. where he put in all the rods, all the screws to do all the spinal work. But you talk to him, he's sitting there, not trying to impress you with anything, and he can answer whatever question you have, but he's very brief, and he loves what he does. Can't wait to get back at another spine. He's a pro. I think a hobbyist kind of likes the thought of being that. A pro is that. I think it's what you are rather than what you'd like to be or what you kind of like playing around with.
Is it a couple of things I've heard about being a pro? Number one, you show up no matter what.
Yeah.
You own it. Owning it was a term for me. Is like when you finally say, I own it, that's all chips in.
Yeah, and you got full responsibility.
So what does responsibility look like when you're a pro for you in your journey, in your process and assignment?
Funny, I don't think about that much. It's just a part of me. When I, for example, accept a commitment to something, I don't renege. I don't think, oh man, I said yes, got to find a way to get out of this. I think, okay, all systems go on this, and I'm making room for it. Like those 4 narrations I mentioned. I'm going to do it. I don't have time to do it. I'll make time. And so you're not selfish. You think whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, and you are on a pursuit toward this responsible task. I think part of it, Noah, is certainly the discipline that gets it done, but you also have to have a part of you that really loves it. You think of it in the daytime and you dream of it at night.
Oh yeah.
It's like a.
It's a romance.
It is. It is. It's like you cannot leave this alone. And so I long for that when I see young preachers and they think, how do I get a big church? And I say, that's a stupid question.
Wrong goal.
Right. Stop thinking about big. Stop thinking about I. Start thinking about how can I do what I'm called to do the very best of my ability. Well, hang around those that do it well. Read them. Listen to them. Learn from them. Steal some things. Ask a lot of questions. But don't ever fall into the trap of I'm gonna get something out of this.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. As a means to the end, like
right. You. There's something driving within you that says I have to do this.
Right. Billy Elliot, the movie, is a story about a young boy that grows up in a really bad situation, and Juilliard type ballet dancer. This kid, phenomenal. Wow. He gets this opportunity to go and perform in front of the school that he really wants to go to bad. This kid has no formal training, and this kid dances flat out in front of this board, and he doesn't know if he's going to make it or not. His dad is, I think he's a coal miner or something, and his dad's waiting outside really nervous. Excellent, beautiful story. But before he walks out, the one lady goes, excuse me, Billy. And he turns around. He's nervous, this kid. She goes, can you describe to me what it's like when you dance? And he goes, I feel like God is dancing through me. And so that romance to me, what I believe, this is my, after 30, 40 years of being on this earth, being around creativity and not just doing it, but being with other people that do it. We are ambassadors of beauty. We've been put on this earth to exemplify his amazing ability as a creator and using us as a vessel of distribution to do it. So can you talk about, there's a term that's a buzzword in with creatives, and it's called flow. And it's that moment of when you're in the zone.
It's one of the greatest moments.
And so that idea of flow, and for Billy Elliot, was God's dancing through me. I'm along for the ride.
Right. The main character in Chariots of Fire said something similar. He said, God made me fast, and when I run, it's God running through me. I have to run.
He has to
I cannot not run.
That's what I'm getting at. You cannot
I know.
not write. If I
right.
told you can't write for a year,
Right.
what would you do?
Right. Yeah. That would be a prison. Yeah. But I can't do it on call. I have to do it as it begins to flow. That's the word you use, and I love it. When I force something, I mess it up. When I'm in the flow of something, I kind of have to get out of the way and let it happen. That's some of the greatest moments in all of life.
One of the greatest lines, and Stephen Pressfield quoted it in his book, The War of Art. He said, he asked this one guy, and he goes, so how do you deal with inspiration? And he's like, oh, it's great because inspiration shows up every morning when I clock in at 9. And so here's what I find. I find that there's a amazing balance and this cadence or this flow.
Yeah.
It's like a dance as a creative.
Yeah.
Here you are, an entrepreneur, as an author. Here you're meeting the demands of your church and,
Right.
and that. But then you have insight in, let's say you've got deadlines for books. Like, hey, we got to have this done by a certain time.
Sound like a publisher.
So a big part of it is, so you have a deadline for a publisher.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So there's the balance of, I can't just wait to be inspired, versus,
Well, that's right.
versus also at the same time,
Yeah.
I have to show up and own it
Yeah.
and muster up sometimes,
Right. Yeah,
or I should say get the things cranking and
Right.
moving.
Flow is not a license to laziness.
So talk about a little bit of that.
Oh. Well, that's the balance between art and organization or good business.
And that
You
talks
know.
about what we were talking before, business as well as the art.
Yeah. It may not fit beautifully, but there was a line in the Revolutionary War that said, trust in God, but keep your powder dry. I trust God every night, but I set the alarm in our house. I rely on God to give me the ideas, but I get up and get at it. I don't hang out in the back porch and think, well, it'll all come to me when I need it. There's a word for that. It's called unemployed. I mean, you gotta get at it, and that's the thing I love about you. And a few like you, you have learned to balance, Noah, between that sense of responsibility, deadlines, and budget, one of those ugly words we don't like, and the flow of the art, the joy of creativity, the fun of splashing color on canvas.
Right.
And however you do that amazing thing, I've watched you do it, it's you're carrying out the calling. I think of it as your calling, and yet you know that it's 5:30, and you promised your wife you'd have supper with her at 7. You don't forget 7.
Totally.
And you don't excuse it saying, hey, I was all involved in my art. I don't have time to come home till midnight.
Right.
Don't get married.
There's a great, totally.
Yeah.
There's a great quote. If I want God to move a mountain, He hands me a shovel. This is a partnership with the Lord. This is a partnering.
Yeah,
with,
it is.
It's a partnering with your craft.
Uh-huh.
And I keep coming back to the responsibility of it.
Yes, it is.
There's prerequisites. If you've been given this gift of creativity or the vision to write or the vision to write songs and
Right.
do amazing creativity,
Right.
that comes with prerequisites
Right.
and responsibility.
Exactly. When our orchestra plays on a Sunday, and man, are they great. Several Dallas Symphony players are in the orchestra. And I mean, when that guy plays violin, he's not a fiddler. He's a violinist. And when this gal plays oboe or bassoon or he plays French horn, I am hearing people who have spent hours practicing for a 4-minute piece of music. And in my estimation, it's flawless. It's rarely flawless in their estimation because they have these great goals. But my point here, they work at that craft. They've gotten the training. They've been mentored. I remember when I took oboe, Mr. Villani from the Houston Symphony came to our home, and we would do oboe duets together. He was as good as any I've ever heard play oboe. And he'd say, okay, let's do this duet together. So he'd give me my part, and he'd play his part. And I'd get into my part, he'd play his part, and it was a counter melody, and I'd stop. Tears would be running out of my eyes.
Oh, man.
And he would say, are you okay? And I go, yes, sir. I've never heard such beautiful oboe. How do you do that?
Yep.
How do you do that? He said, you'll do that. And if I'd stayed at it, I would have gotten better, but I would have never been Belani. But when he played, his instrument was a part of him.
It's second nature.
His tone, his intonation, his ability to blend. He knew when I needed to breathe, and he would breathe.
Totally.
Incredible ability to work with others. That's another thing that's important. Mm-hmm. A professional isn't selfish. You are engaged in this gift that God has given you, and when you've got your perspective right on this, you're not there to make a name. I think ideally money will come where necessary, and you'll have your needs met. But there are a lot of very gifted, starving people, and I understand that. But when you balance responsibility and giftedness, when you do great art and also good business, you'll make your bills.
Yep. I heard a great quote from Elton John was asked, hey, what's going to happen when you don't write a good song? And he goes, it's impossible. And that taught me something, that even what we might think is subpar is still amazing. And I see so many people will whittle away and triple think it to death to the point where they've overbaked it. I'm like, listen, let it go.
Yeah,
you got more in the can.
Right.
Just like you said, you got more behind the counter.
Yeah, that's right.
Just get it
don't
out.
be afraid to wad it up and go at it again. My wastebasket stays about half full. I'm forever tearing something up and going for something better. And I think, why am I messing with this? That's not in the right direction. And I'll toss it. I'll get at it again. Now, when it starts to work, then I'm on my way.
Totally.
But it took that trash
to
make this something worth reading or thinking through.
So I've got some. I knew we were having this interview, so one of the things that I did want to talk to you about was failure.
Oh yeah.
I
was speaking. Excuse me for interrupting, but I was speaking at Wheaton College, a
Yep.
Christian college in Illinois. And I decided my last lecture there, it was a spiritual life week, 4 days, and I talked on all the other stuff they expected. And I said to the chaplain when we had supper together the night before, I said, hey, I'm gonna risk something. I'm gonna talk about something these kids haven't heard since they got here. And that's failure. He goes, I love it. He says, I've been here 12 years, I've never heard the word mentioned in chapel.
Interesting.
They're all told that you're the Harvard of the Christian world. So I stood up and I said, you are not the Harvard of anything. You're just what you are. And the fact is, before too many more years in your life, you're going to know what it is to fall flat on your face. You could have heard a pin drop. I saw heads look around that head. And I said, the greatest dread in all of your lives is failing a test. So you're all, it's a world, it's a school full of valedictorians.
Yeah.
They're all bright. So I said, you're very impressed with yourself. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's a great quote I learned years ago, and you need to remember it. When God wants to do an impossible task, he takes an impossible person and crushes him.
It's good stuff.
Isn't that good?
Oh, it's very good.
And I said to them, don't lift your hands, but how many of you have been crushed? I have a feeling not one of you knows what I'm talking about. Because you've been carefully kept. Your folks are probably pretty well healed, or you couldn't have afforded to come here, or you got a scholarship, which means you're just as rich. One of these days, you won't have a scholarship in life, and you have to make it on your own, and you got to blow it royally. And when you do, I want you to remember this, because I want to talk to you about failure. Notebooks came out, pages got open, and they started writing because they hadn't thought about that before. I do not think you can become who you are without times of failure.
And embracing it.
You've got to accept it. Don't rationalize around it. Don't act like it didn't happen. Don't deny it. You failed. You failed at that. That only proves you're human.
And Disney,
doesn't mean you're finished. It means you're human.
And Disney said it. He goes, unless I'm failing, I'm not growing.
Wow. Anytime I ask someone to tell me about their growth, they never tell me about the great times. They always say, well,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, when my wife walked out, took the kids, and she should have, and I was at rock bottom, that's when I finally learned to begin to listen, begin to grow.
And you said a quote a long time ago when we were standing around. You go, "I've yet to see a man that's received glorification that had not gone through the crucible."
Oh, yeah. One of the characteristics of a type A, which you and I are, off the chart, is a lack of self-awareness. Unless you've been mentored or unless you've been crushed. When you are mentored by a insightful, honest individual
Yeah.
that tells you
Right.
the truth, and you accept it, or unless you have been crushed and had to face the truth,
Right.
you don't know who you are. When you find out the real you, you're on your way,
Yep.
and you're not impressed because you know the real you.
The moment that this started to happen for me was when, as trials or crucible stuff happening, dark nights of the soul, that changed my creativity where it became fearless. Because the sooner I failed, the sooner I was going to hit the target. But you can't live a ready aim life. You got to fire. You got to pull the trigger. And so many creatives think by osmosis of being in the stadium. They're in the stand, but they're not on the field taking the hit.
It reminds me of one of my very best Greek professors at seminary. Brilliant beyond belief. Never wrote a book. So I said to him one time, I won't call his name. I said, Dr. So-and-so, man, I got stacks of books from this doc. Every time we take this guy's course, he's got his own textbook. You got nothing, he said. And I'm not very proud of that. I said, why? It will never be right enough. So he couldn't write unless it was flawless.
Totally. Wanted perfection.
You know what? He'll never write, and he never did. And he had so much he could have communicated. But he was afraid he might leave out an angle of theology that wouldn't square and answer this issue or that. There's a tension in every subject.
Totally.
Every subject. And there isn't right and wrong. Just like there isn't right art or wrong art, or right music or wrong music. There is music.
Yeah.
There's the beauty of it. And the beauty of it is the humanity of it.
Yep.
And the thing that turns the musician into an absolutely wonderful instrumentalist or vocalist is the humanity in it. Otherwise, you can do it digitally.
Yep.
And it never, ever
Cookie
has
cutter.
a flaw. It's digital.
But you know what? You could go back to Grace Awakening 4 or 5 times and still know that you'd want to add or tweak.
Yep, I know, I could. In fact, I went back once and did some things, and I thought it's the last time I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave that alone. Because, it's just what is, and I'm not going to try to perfect it.
One of the things I talk about a lot with my members and the people that we do life with is there's a surface level of exposure. Up here, the world sees everything. Most leaders, entrepreneurs, they want to do this. They want to but the moment they were to break the surface and be exposed, comes with responsibility, exposure being seen for who you truly are. So that is fear. And that's that ceiling of complexity that most creators or entrepreneurs or leaders will put on themselves.
Yeah, because folks don't hold back. They'll tell you what they really think.
Totally. Now, here's the deal. You usually launched in an analog world. Back then, it was...
That's correct.
It was books. There was no internet.
Correct.
There wasn't even a cell phone. I'm not trying to put your and I's age in place.
It's true, man.
But now things are way different. But even back then, you're like, man, if I put this out there, it might suck.
Yeah.
I mean, and bad.
Yeah.
And I've got momentum going at this church. I've got momentum. The last thing I want to see is that I don't have it together. Talk to me about your strategy. What is your go-to strategy on overcoming fear and self-doubt?
You have to build, I don't care, you got to build it into your system. I can't care that they don't agree. I need to pick up the part of it that will be helpful. Most of it isn't. because those who criticize are not producing. Rarely will a very accomplished artist criticize an accomplished artist because they know what he's going through.
What he's at stake, totally. It's another
You
brother.
know, it's the kid that thinks he knows all about it, sitting in the back of the room going, yeah, but I don't agree with so and so and so. You know, I don't really care whether you agree with it or not. Mm-hmm. All I know is this has worked for me, and that's what I'm here to tell you, what has worked. I find that if I run scared, I will hesitate.
Because that's what it is. It's running scared.
Yeah, it is. And when you hesitate, you are forever out of sync with your system. You have to be able to go for it. One day you had to learn to drive. You had to learn, and in my days you learned the clutch and the brake and all that went with the gears and all. And you had to realize I'm not going to do all this right. And you have to have somebody help you drive that says that's okay. It's okay. I tore the fender off my granddad's car. He had a great line. I was going in the garage. It was a 39 Ford. The right fender just kind of collapsed. And he said, back up, let's try that again. I said, wait a minute, Granddaddy. He says, don't worry about that. I can get more fenders, but I can't get more grandkids. Mm-hmm. Any reason I was real close to him. Mm-hmm. He accepted me for who I was. Mm-hmm. Failure and all. But you have to learn to get in there, throw the gear in, and start. And you ultimately wind up to driving on freeways, and, you know, making bad turns, but you get out there. If you are forever analyzing, you'll never get your license.
Totally. And we term that we use, analysis paralysis.
Yep, that's right.
Paralyzed with analyzing it to death.
Right. And I remember, too, because I live my life in a fishbowl.
Talk to me.
Well, whatever I do is seen, heard, and known as it relates to my craft. I don't write a book and then just read it myself. I publish it. So people who read it don't agree with a lot of it or some of it or whatever. There's always somebody that doesn't agree with something. And here again, I'll hear from some of them. Others I'll hear round about what they thought of it. And all I know is when I wrote that, that's what I really believed. And I did it the best I could. I say again, often they've never written a book. But they know how you should have written yours. So I take that into consideration. I often, like my dad would say, when a horse kicks you, or mule kicks you, consider the source. Just remember, those that you really admire will rarely be unfair in their criticism. They'll criticize, but it'll be objective. It'll be helpful.
Constructive.
Howie Hendricks, one of my great mentors, now gone, said to me on one occasion, I'll never forget this. You have a great sense of humor, Chuck, but it's often at someone else's expense. Hit me like a dagger. He was exactly right. Often the one that was the target of my humor was my wife. And it was just terribly funny, except one person in the room didn't laugh. So he said, why don't you learn to cultivate a great sense of humor and you be the brunt of the joke? It'll help you. What great counsel.
That's great.
I think that's the last time I said something that made someone else the goat. I'm the goat. I say that because I was criticized for what I was doing, and I was out to lunch in that.
Sure.
It wasn't humor, it was sarcasm.
Yep. And
I used it at her expense. And she was gracious enough to overlook it.
Yep.
Usually.
One thing that I've witnessed with you and Cynthia, growing the brand, forget what you're in the business and lifestyle of doing. I want to dismiss the topic of what it is the content that you do. I want to talk about just the climate of the world that you've lived in. The amount of resistance that resistance and interference, okay? Relational things, strategic things with building things and initiatives and things going sideways and just family stuff, you name it. How do you create in the eye of the storm? Because here's the deal. I'm not going and just digging a ditch. I am required, what brings me revenue and what brings me livelihood has to have my heart in it. So how in the world do I do something? How is my craft that I got to put my heart into while there's a flipping tornado going around me? And then this contractor calling in, and this vendor...
Let me tell you something. That's a big deal, that subject.
I'm telling you. That's why I want to sit down for today.
That's a huge deal.
How do you create in that?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. I'm writing the book on David when I began my profiles in the lives of great lives in the Bible. And I was doing David. And once I got into it, all hell broke loose. And we got a call from our former son-in-law who informed us that our daughter had left with another man. Left the children, left the home. I'm writing this book. And I can still remember at the end of chapter 19. And I'm like stuck. So I call a really good friend, Byron Williamson. And I go, Byron, let me tell you what's happened. I'm just like sobbing. And he goes, okay, what do you want to know? And I said, I can't do this. He says, wait. That's the reason you can do this. Because it was one of the chapters I'd done on David's failure. And he said, you don't have to spell out the details, but admit that you're at a tough place. Say it. And I did. Read the end of chapter 19. You'll read it in David.
On that, and I know this is a touchy thing because you've gone through, the crucible never stops. You and I sat at lunch.
But it has a good ending. It has a good ending.
I bet.
Yeah, but the beginning was horrible. I sat in a chair, Cynthia sat on the sofa. Neither of us slept much. We were losing our health. I took a leave from the seminary. I told the guys I couldn't show up. Dr. Cooper, Ken Cooper, my physician, said to me, you're going to die if you keep it up. Are you going to go on or are you going to let that kill you? And I said, it's a great question. I don't know the answer. He said, I know the answer and you know it too. You're going to go on. I want to see you down here on the track, and I want to see you eating again, and I want to see both of you sleeping again. Otherwise, you're of no use to anybody. It's like the old guy that says, I'd rather burn out than rust out. Well, either way, you're out. What kind of an option is that? No, I'd rather grow through it and acknowledge I don't know what to do. And in the crucible, as you put it, you emerge better, wiser, more seasoned, and broken. All of them go together.
Well, and everybody would think that everything's roses for you guys.
Oh, I know they do. I've had people say that. We did a book on family, and in the back, all of us wore white.
You guys are perfect.
Sasha was white. Chuck's dog.
Good Lord. Throw some mud on that thing.
Big, fluffy Sasha. We just had her done. She was we're standing in a room that's got white walls and do the picture. And so we had a lady write us and say, do you ever have an argument? Do you ever spill the milk? Do you ever... and I go, why would she ask that? She said,
I'm looking at Colleen, like, little do they know.
Look at the picture. And I looked at it, and I thought, why did we do that? Why did we do that? We thought it'd be cute, to have it. I guess it should have been done with us hanging out in the backyard, where we usually did, hung out. And
with food on your chest.
Yeah, that's part of it. That was yesterday. And so back to my story. I quoted a couple of old hymns as I ended. Come ye disconsolate, where'er you languish. Come to the mercy seat, fervently kneel. Here bring your wounded heart. Here bring your sorrow. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot meet. I cannot tell you the people who've written saying that's some of your best writing. I was at the end of my rope. I wasn't going to go on. And Byron said, you got to write. Just let bleed on the page. Let it come on through. And I've heard Colleen say, on the darkest times in dealing with her sweet son, Jonathan, autistic, sometimes very difficult to handle. And she just handles it so well. She said, what you don't know is the behind the scenes moments when I've just felt it's so dark.
Yeah.
So hopeless. Noah, you gotta have them and you gotta let them be. That's part of being the person you're becoming.
Totally.
You gotta let it be. Don't deny it. Don't act like it didn't. Don't rationalize around it. Don't blame.
Oh, for sure.
If it hadn't been for the son-in-law, she wouldn't have done so. Wait. Take it. Live with it. Cry through it. And finally, you began to emerge someone else. The person you're meant to be. And you couldn't have been that person without this. Totally. See, this is the part, Noah, that very few people will talk about. But it is this part that makes us who we are.
That's all that matters.
How do I feel the compassion of a David when he's dealing with Mephibosheth, this crippled son of Jonathan, of Saul and Jonathan, when I read through that passage and I see that David said, come live with us. Normally a king would kill all the other, members of the former royal family. He said to Mephibosheth, come. And so I had a saying in my book, and the tablecloth covered his feet.
That's sweetness.
That's and grace. Here he has Joab. Here he has Jonathan. Who's the one with the flowing raven hair that in the family that turned on him later? I forget his other son, handsome. And he's got Tamar, and he hears this clump, the crutch, and here comes Mephibosheth to the table, and he sits with everybody, and the tablecloth covered his feet. David understood and had room in his life for somebody who couldn't keep up. I think that's greatness at its best. I really do. I don't think your greatness is in your art, and I'm impressed with your art, and you're so prolific and so capable. But it's in who you have become as a person and are becoming. Because you don't arrive. Totally. You're still on the steps.
Process.
And I think you are so much more mature than when you got underway. Of course. Because you've let this hit with full force.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
I mean it.
There's a couple things that I do need to ask that will help me. I mean, this isn't just for people that are watching, and this gets into a couple of tacticals. So thanks for going to the heart on those issues. But in terms of when you've selected an A team, because you can't do life on an island as a creative, as you start to build your brand and you start to move forward in things.
Got to have a team.
Got to. What is your criteria of absolutes for having a team? And who you want on your team, who you want on the bus, and who you don't.
Cynthia often uses that analysis: right person, right seat, right bus, right destination. Obviously, those people need to be unselfish. They can't care who gets the credit. They have to be team players. They have to be folks who understand more than their own discipline, their own subject. I like them to be seasoned if we're choosing the ideal.
Sure.
I want them to be quick to forgive, not grudge holders, not blamers. I like them to have a good sense of humor. I enjoy it if they have good family relations, because that's where life makes up its mind. And they have a good relationship with their kids. I usually will interview their kids because I want to know what life is like from the kids' perspective.
Yep.
You find out a lot.
Oh, sure.
And often without the husband around, I like to interview the wife.
Yeah.
And I will say...
That'll tell a lot.
Yeah, I will say, please do your best to speak openly, because I really want to know, and I don't know who this person is. I also will look at resume and training, but I don't give a whole lot of credence to the, top of the class type of background. Often those that didn't do real well in school become the ones that emerge. And there's nothing wrong with scholarship.
Yeah.
It just only gets your foot in the door.
Totally.
Yeah. I look for character traits that are set forth in the scriptures. Do they
Integrity.
love from the heart? Yeah, that's a big one. That is a big one. Do they tell the truth? Do they love deeply from the heart? Are they at peace with themselves? These are qualities. The more we get it, the more they got to walk on water, it sounds like.
Right.
But you will often find people that fit many of those qualities. And when you do, it's amazing.
And would you rather? Here's an interesting one. Would you rather pay a lot for world class, or would you rather pay less and groom?
I think I'd rather pay less and groom. It's not the pay that gets me. I like grooming them into the kind of people we ought to be. World class usually arrives with a lot of self involved in it, and I don't want to have to walk around all the self.
Got it.
I don't like them to be carefully kept and have to be bolstered.
Totally.
in that area.
Shank and I have talked this a lot. What does it mean when you say leadership is messy?
We've talked about a lot of it today. It's a process, and it is a knowing how to deal with the mistakes that are going to happen.
They're going
part
to
of the
happen.
messiness.
It's not about life. Isn't about avoiding.
No, it isn't.
It's about head right through the wall.
I had
roll.
an excellent Finnish carpenter tell me the difference between a guy that does a rugged job and a guy that does a real superb job. The guy that does a superb job knows how to handle his mistakes. And I think life is mistake-filled. And I don't want to be preoccupied with those mistakes, but I want to be able to acknowledge them. And I think those who are qualified to do a job have learned how to do that.
Last three quick ones. Leadership is lonely.
I have a little booklet called The Lonely Whine of the Top Dog. I had the owner of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Bill Johnson, say to me, I want 150 of those. And I go, okay. He said, that's the best thing you've written. I said, Bill, it's just a booklet. He said, you have put your finger on the number one issue of our lives. Those of us who are in this realm are lonely people. The reason is you're given penthouse treatment. You fly first class. You are given top dollar. You're able to do things in the realm that most people would go, whoa, I'm not able. And you're able to accomplish that. So the further up you are, the less people are around. Even when you invite them to come, they sit at attention because they're in the penthouse. So you have to realize that not only that, but my mind is racing.
I love it.
You also have to realize that doing great work requires some solitude. Hendricks used to say, you cannot turn out a scholar without the luxury of solitude. Even the psalmist says this, be still and know that I'm God. I don't play music when I'm in my study. I don't have TV on when I'm in my study. My study's upstairs and out of the way. And when I'm there, I like that place to be quiet. I don't learn anything when I'm talking. And I find that I can't learn as well as I should when I'm surrounded by a lot of other talk. So sometimes the aloneness is helpful.
For sure.
But there's difference in that and being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of it has to do with your own security. If you're insecure, you have to have other people around. You have to have stuff that's filling. I said to a lady as I getting off the plane, as soon as the plane stops, the elevator music starts. She said, people can't stand silence. That's a pretty good observation.
Big time.
You know why? Because most are insecure. Bring on the music, whatever kind of music. Just drown out the stuff I don't like to face or deal with. Mm-hmm. When you're alone, and this is what solitary confinement, I guess, does to you, you're forced to face the real stuff. And some go mad in a setting like that.
Mm-hmm. How would you define the word grit when it comes to leadership and influence?
Determination to press on.
I'm just teeing up grand slams for you here, my friend.
They are great questions. Determination to press on regardless. Grit is the ability to take the blows and not let them cripple you. Learn from them, but don't linger in them too long. Grit is also the discipline to pursue with a goal toward accomplishing. There's a great proverb. Desire accomplished is sweet to the soul. When I've accomplished something, I like the word done.
It's so
But
good.
I wrote it at the end of writing those 4 narrations. I wrote Don McMahon. I said, here are the 4 narrations you wanted done. I love that. You know that
so
about
good.
me.
It's amazing.
And so the grit says, stay at it until it is done. It's finishing. There's 1.5 million new authors every year who will never finish their dream. Finish the sucker. Get it done. Mm-hmm. I think grit, why am I yelling? I think grit says...
when we get together, the volume just...
Right, I know. I get a little passionate. A little. Grit says it's worth it. Sacrifice is part of it. But when you view it as getting it done like you know it should be done, it's not a sacrifice.
Totally.
That's part of it.
Yep.
If you work on something till 2 a.m, it's not like, oh man, I was at this till 2. I mean, you couldn't put your brush down. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Time wasn't important. Mm-hmm. That's grit.
Yep.
Staying at it.
Yep. And last, how do you stay inspired? How do you fill the cup? I'm giving you the full day off. You can do whatever you want. No calls, no meetings, nobody in family, no obligation, no responsibility. How do you fill your cup?
I select the right things to read, and I'm involved in reading.
What do you crave? What does your heart crave other than that solitude and that quiet?
I crave growth.
Learning?
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge? Wisdom?
Wisdom, always wisdom. I'll choose that over knowledge anytime. The ability to apply what I know. Mm-hmm. I like understanding better than knowledge. I have a wife she's got her degree in understanding. And if I can't do something so-and-so, her response is often, I understand. That just brings such ease. Mm-hmm. Grace is another one. We haven't even used the word today. I crave being a person of grace, accepting rather than resisting, rejecting, helping a person become what they're meant to be rather than putting them down for what they are or what they've done. My words to any one of my 4 grown children, if they were to tell me, boy, I really blew it, as soon as they get through with the sentences, I can't wait to say, that's okay. There's a tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make it through this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the pain of where you are, but life hasn't stopped. It's a chapter.
Yep.
It's not the book.
Mm-hmm. So inspiration.
Yeah.
How do you get it? Where do you go?
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to place?
Well, obviously you expect me to say the scriptures, and that's true, but I sometimes go to memory.
Do you go to a physical place?
No, I don't have to have a physical place. I could be inspired in my car just as I could be inspired in my study. And my study has my resources around me, and that helps because I love great words. Speaking of that, I was listening to the music of a great theologian the other day, Waylon Jennings.
Oh, yeah.
Wish I had known Waylon. He's got an album called The Eagle. And a part of The Eagle is this song. Splintered wood, rusty chains. This old front porch swing remains a pendulum of memories, swinging back and forth on a summer breeze, singing old church hymns and nursery rhymes from the days way back before my time.
Yes,
With a little child upon my knee, singing every sweet word back to me. Look how far I had to come to get back where I started from. With a child's wisdom passing time, singing old church hymns and nursery rhymes.
That's good stuff.
Isn't that great? That inspires me.
So, yeah, musical movie.
Oh, yeah. That
you hear the
inspires me.
orchestra-
And you know what? I don't care where he comes from. I don't go, well, he was a liberal, so I'm not sure I can listen to that.
Yeah.
Or this guy didn't believe in Jesus, so I'm not going to pay attention. Some of the greatest people I've read never believed in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they had. But they had great minds.
Mm-hmm.
They went through great times. I'm still not convinced Abraham Lincoln was a believer. I mean, he wrote like one and thought like one, but whether he stepped through the hoops as we would see it, maybe he did. Or Winston Churchill is another one. And I could name, dozens others. But those guys went through time. I mean, think of the entire term of Lincoln's first term in office, nothing but civil war. Called every ugly name in the book. Received the most horrible kind of messages. A wife that didn't understand him and a little weird herself. If you look at her, you know why he traveled a lot. Of course, that's another subject. And lost a son, lost all those people in the war, and feels so out of place at Gettysburg when the guy before him talks for an hour and a half, and he gets up with a little talk that's on the back of an envelope. It comes to be known as the Gettysburg Address. And nobody even remembers a line from that other dude. And here Lincoln's back of the envelope piece is profound beyond words.
Oh, yeah.
What a mind.
Totally.
I get inspired when I read about a guy like that. How did he do that? How did he keep from just...
You like other storytellers, though. It's your DNA.
It is.
I mean, you get lit up with other storytellers.
Oh, yeah.
Great men that knew how to write speeches.
Right.
And
that's right.
You can tell in your craft, though. You emulate. So what are your go-tos? Because I was last question was the fun questions. Like top three. Like people ask me, who's your top three artists? Like for writers.
Oh man.
Or just rattle off whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be the top.
I think one of the freshest pens in town is Philip Yancey.
Okay.
I love reading Philip's work. I love works like The Explorers. It's put together by Martin Dugard, who helped Bill O'Reilly write all the Killing books.
Got it.
Dugard has written a marvelous little book called, I'm reading it now for the third time. And there's another one who wrote one on checklists. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued by him. He's a physician. His name looks like a misprint. But by the way, in the book on Explorers, he gives us 7 qualities of every explorer. And it's always in this order. When I read it, I memorized them. These are the qualities that every explorer exhibits. Let me see if I can pull this out.
And would this go the same for leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, pioneers?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. In fact, I'm getting ready to do a cruise conference where I'm going to make this kind of
Nice.
the crux of it. It starts with curiosity, leads to hope, passion, courage, independence, self-discipline, perseverance. Don't you love it?
No, it's
Aren't
perfect.
those 7 great?
No, it's perfect.
They are great.
Oh, yeah.
They're like a complete globe.
You can hand that out on a business card. Oh, I want to go into business for myself. There's
There
what
you
you're
are.
gonna need.
There you are. And he said, if you take away any one, the expedition is a failure. Curiosity, hope, passion, courage, independence, self-discipline, perseverance. Cynthia and I together have talked about that for hours. And I said, those are the qualities I'd love to have working in my life. I'd like them balanced. I do need curiosity, and I've got it. I'm not as curious as she is. We sit at a booth and have supper, and she said, wait a minute. She's listening to what they're saying back there because she's curious about that. I don't care about that. I don't listen to that. But she's curious about a lot of things. How'd they do this? How'd they put that together? You know, and on and on. And then hope. That's a big thing. When you explore, you're forever hoping over that hill is, you know. And then the passion that drives you when things get dry or bogged down. And then courage speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
Independence. When it's all said and done, all the lights are out, everybody else has gone to bed, you are with your art and independent of anybody. Come on, Noah, get it done. Come on, stay at it.
Oh, yeah.
You got it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, that self-discipline leads to that. And then perseverance, you just stay at it.
Bang the drum, bang the drum.
Stay at it, stay at it. It's a pleasure to see how you're growing.
Well,
I really mean that.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, man. I love you. And it's amazing. This is historic for me.
Good.
Because I'm in your downline. And it's trickled down, and I've applied it. And
I am thrilled.
The fruit that's coming, I cannot thank you enough. So thanks for your time. Love you.
You're welcome.
Hey, until next time, you guys, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. If you didn't, something is very wrong.
Either with us or with you.
Yeah, totally. All right, talk later, guys. Thanks.